Hi, this is Scott Howard. You are listening to our latest edition of a High Pro Factory Side podcast, and today we will be talking about diesel fuel filtration. This is our second podcast on diesel fuel filtration. Today I'm joined by Jim Simonton. Jim, if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Hi, yeah, thanks. I'm Jim Simonton. I've been working with diesel filtration for almost 10 years now. Actually, coming up on my 10-year anniversary here in just a few weeks. And over the 10 years, things have changed dramatically within diesel engine world. And as we all have seen over the last several months, if you look at diesel prices, uh, a year and a half ago, they were roughly running about $2.30 to $2.80 a gallon, and now in many parts of the country, it's well over $6 a gallon, pushing seven. And because of that expense, it is very imperative to make sure that the fuel that you are using is as clean as possible to protect the engines, because to repair an engine right now with supply chain issues and all the other economic turmoil within our supply chain is it is absolutely something that needs to be taken care of. Is make sure you protect that engine as much as you possibly can.
Yes, it's very timely for this podcast. So, Jim, what I'd like to do is start off with an objection. If you have a customer that says, "Hey, I don't know if I really need to filter my diesel fuel as it is unloaded from the supplier because it's a reputable supplier," what are some of the things you like to point out?
So, like I would have indicated in my seminars, is this is actually a very common objection in that uh, there's a lot of suppliers that, and on their site, their fuel actually is pretty clean. I've done some samples at various sites, and I've been pleasantly surprised here and there. But the one thing that I've always learned, and sometimes the hard way, is that every time diesel fuel moves, it gets recontaminated. So if you're offloading it from their site, from the supplier site onto their truck, bringing it up to your site, it's going to get pretty contaminated. Offloading it off the truck into your tanks is another site where it's going to get recontaminated. And quite frankly, just sitting in the tank is another area where it can get recontaminated, because it's the tanks, oftentimes they don't have breathers on them, or at least proper breathers. And it just does not take very much dust to contaminate diesel. And the new high pressure common rail engines that have been out for the last 10 years, those are they have very tight tolerances, and just any contamination at all is is enough to ruin an engine, and it's tens of thousands of dollars sometimes, uh, to replace those. So it's a very it is something that you want to take seriously, of making sure that you're protecting that system at every step of the process, just to make sure that your equipment runs smoothly. And we're not, the reality is filtration is very cheap in comparison to in comparison to replacing all
Or the injectors?
the injectors. Thank you. For some reason just was thinking not injectors, some other word, but those are really expensive to replace, and for a couple $1,000s of filtration, you're saving tens and tens of thousands of dollars down the road.
So, Jim, what are the contaminants that you like to focus on, that you like to point out to the customer that we do need to address?
The typical contaminants in diesel are almost always just it's dirt, and water. Just the the process of delivering the fuel. It's there's the hoses are dirty. Just transferring pulls in a bunch of dust that can contaminate it. And then also there's water molecules from condensation that form just through the natural humidity in the air, or the wild temperature swings, depending on where you are in the country, that will also lead to a dew point. So water gets in there. And then, quite frankly, on these tanks, a lot of them have sort of open air breathers. Um, Rainwater gets into them. There's all sorts of issues of getting water and sort of dust contaminant into the fuel, and those definitely need to be addressed.
So, Jim, I have a question for you. Let's say your customer agrees that we need to filter as the fuel is loaded into the bulk tank, but they have a few 100,000 gallons or a large amount of fuel that sits on their site and is not used all that often. It's going to sit there for a little bit. What are some of the other options we have as far as attaching to a bulk tank?
So one of the other pieces of equipment that we have available to for that type of situation is a kidney loop, and kidney loops can be sized from something as little as 100 gallons up to several 100,000 gallons. We have the ability to scale our pumps and capabilities to address that specific need. Because the reality is you want to pass that fuel through those filters. If you want to make sure that every drop hits that filter, it needs to go through at least 7 times. So if you say you want to be able, and you want to do that quickly, so you got to address that pump and the filter amount or size, depending on how you're doing it, uh, to meet that challenge, because you want to be able to do it in hours, not days, if at all possible. And we definitely have that capability to scale our kidney loops to meet whatever situation that our customers have.
That's good information, Jim. And one thing I'd like to point out is kidney loop filtration is very effective in helping to eliminate the microbial growth. We find that diesel fuel that just sits and is stagnant, that
Hmm.
has some amount of free water in it, will on occasion start to have bacterial growth. And by moving the fluid, it eliminates that possibility. So we're addressing the dirt, obviously, for the injectors, but we're also addressing the free water, and then we're continuously moving the fuel around so it eliminates that bacteria buildup. And we have options as far as like coalesce. Coalesce if there's a lot of water in the supply of the tank, or if they have an open tank that does gain water over time, then we have the ability to coalesce and separate the water, the free water, from the diesel fuel while it's in the tank. Do you have any other thoughts as far as what you hear that you would like to talk about as far as bulk tank filtration and some of the questions that you may hear as far as sizing or the contaminants that we need to address?
Well, yeah. So another thing that people often miss on their bulk tanks is adding proper breathers. Uh, we have. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a site and they just have a J. They have a little pipe sticking out and a little J, and which every time they're pulling fuel out of that tank, they're drawing air in, which is going to have a lot of dust in it. So having a breather on that tank to keep that dust out, and also some of our technologies within our breathers actually they work to, depending on the humidity in the area at that particular time, they work to keep that moisture either um, they're working to keep the moisture out from getting into the tank, or quite frankly, it's it, it, it's not allowing. Well, it's always not allowing more moisture in, and uh, that is something that customers should try to get themselves familiarized with, is how to keep that moisture down to a minimum, and proper breathers are a huge factor in that.
We have one product that we call the trap breather. That seems to be one product that does a very good job. That's as far as keeping the water out, and then it also is regenerative.
Yes, it's and that's kind of the cool technology of the trap, is that it will dry itself out. It traps the moisture, and then as the day goes on, or as the humidity levels change, it'll dry itself out, regenerate. We've seen over the years that that the trap breather will last at least as long as any of the standard desiccant breathers that are out there. Um, and it is just a much better technology for for protecting the fuel.
Well, Jim, I really appreciate the information and your knowledge. This is very helpful. It seems like we are in an era right now where the fuel is very expensive, but also with the supply chain issues as far as getting replacement components for engines can be a delay. So it seems like this is very timely for people to address contamination control with fuel.
Absolutely. And again, it's, sort of the mantra I've always had is, if you take your filter right down to its most basic level, it is insurance. It's very cheap insurance and will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in sometimes very short time.
Okay, Jim, thank you very much for your knowledge and your expertise on fuel contamination control. It's very timely, and it's good to review the three areas that we like to address contamination control. One is the bulk tank carrier to the bulk tank, in line at that aspect, and if there's going to be diesel fuel on site for a period of time. Kidney loop filtration options for the bulk tank, both fixed and portable, and then also at the nozzle, as we spoke about in a previous podcast. Thank you for listening in on this latest edition of the High Pro Factory Side podcast. Please visit us on the social media sites on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you.